And what we were able to do in 4 years was to make women of color shorthand for something quite beautiful. It's not just about solidifying a multiracial coalition of women at a time where the majority of many of the swing states are already people of color. It's not just solidarity. It's also shorthand for a political vision that's grounded in a new politics, like a refounding of America. And we're coming up to a 250-year anniversary of the signing of the Constitution. So think about that. The Constitution signed by white dudes who, many of them owned people, is it like human traffickers. Like, we need to refound the fundamentals. And we think the term women of color can lead us to this new era. And 4 years, if you Google women of color now, you're going to see a lot of things. You're going to see a Supreme Court justice in her speech after she was confirmed, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, call herself as a woman of color. Like,
Yes.
she says, as a woman of color. It isn't her racial identity. It's shorthand for something greater. And the beautiful thing about what we were able to do as it relates to you and the How Women Lead community that I'm part of is that it's women of color leading an inclusive multiracial coalition who fundamentally believes that we should have a multiracial democracy. We don't have it yet because there are swaths of people, most this week in Wisconsin, last week in Georgia, before that in Texas, who are not guaranteed, even though they're citizens and they have the right to vote, they're not guaranteed that their vote will be counted or protected. And that is the situation in 2022. And that's the work ahead. So I think what we did was we made space in American culture for the potential of something new that is still in the process of being born. And I like to say it's a politics we have not yet seen. But if we can imagine it, it is possible. We can still hold on to that and not be overwhelmed by cynicism and negativity, a sense of individualism that will destroy the best promise that democracy and justice has to offer for us. So She the People's my prayer for all of that to continue. And we've seen in 4 years what can happen. Now we got to see what's next.
So what is next? Tell me about, like, is it the next election? Like, what are the biggest rocks here?
There's so much happening right now. I mean, I think for those of us who are like, wow, I'm in my 50s, almost my entire life, I had the right to choose, and everybody I knew had the right to choose. And now we do not have that. We're in an era where you can call the Republicans, you can call it the radical right. I don't know what you want to call the people who are taking away our freedom right now. But that's what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And for a while, it was happening in slow motion. Certainly women of color knew and never really felt free, so understood what that was. But now fundamental freedoms that are racial, gender, and economic justice issues for us are being taken away. And we're in that moment right now. We're in a moment where those same people who challenged the 2020 election results are, in some cases, the majority of state legislatures and have infiltrated county voting apparatus. And there are people who are going to be on the ballot in November who openly say that they fundamentally believe that voting is just of the people that they approve of, and they're people who continue the big lie. And so that's what we're dealing with, so much. And that is on top of the climate catastrophe and the violence that we see, gun violence, all those things. And it can feel very overwhelming. I will just say that what is really ailing our country is bigger than politics. I think the biggest, you used to call it the big rock, it's like the boulder in the room, is that we have to figure out how to come together on something that is bigger than political party, it's bigger than a label. It has to be based on human terms. And I don't mean that in a naive way. I mean the American experiment, which is now a multiracial country that has the biggest military in the world, and still to this day influences the global community, although that has evolved. We have to figure out how to connect based on our values. Without us connecting on issues of love and justice, all deciding that we want a country where people belong, where we find belonging, you cannot have a democracy without those things. And you cannot have a country that uplifts the basic humanity of everyone without those things. And what I'm finding is, so in order to address that big boulder in the room, we first have to know a lot from the very women who they're suffering the most from the policies and practices of the country, for whom making abortion illegal means not being able to fly to California. It means a life of poverty without a social safety net. I mean, there's a lot that women of color know about taking this freedom away and how it's going to actually be in lived experience. And that's the same as a number of other issues. We got to know more from women of color who are closest to the problem, because we have seen that elevating the leadership and ideas and organizing of women of color also means that they've got the best ideas because they understand the problem the best. And so what She the People has been doing over the last couple of months is we're listening. We got to listen. Yeah. And so we're holding a 10-state listening session where we have women of color, Black, Latina, Asian American, Pacific Islander, Middle Eastern, Indigenous, come together in these rooms with USC researchers, themselves women of color, in conversations. We got to listen. And we're doing polling. And the idea is, out of all that, we understand what's happening on the ground and we understand the stories, because belonging, which is the center of our organizing going forward, we have to have stories that tell who we are. We did a listening session in the Central Valley from a group of Black women who have been for years organizing on expanding abortion access. They went to Sacramento. Now, remember, we're in California. Everyone says, hey, this is a blue state. Hey, you've got a governor and you've got a supermajority of Democrats. You're good, right?
Yeah,
you're all good.
Easy. Uh-huh.
Never mind that women, especially women of color, are severely underrepresented in the state legislature. Never mind that. This group of activists went to the state capitol in order to speak on behalf of a bill that would expand abortion access for low-income women, mostly women of color, who is a majority of women in our state. And they were overwhelmed by MAGA anti-abortion people at the Capitol, and were told by the police there that they had to leave. They could not protect them. This is a story. This is just one little story of California dedicated to the freedom of women, the people who take time out of their workday and they go to Sacramento as citizens to advocate on our behalf and on all of our behalf. And the forces, the dangerous, vile forces that are out there affect us even here in California. These are the kind of stories that we have got to both capture and tell, because there is no corner of this country that's a safe haven where we can kick back and relax.
Yeah.
That the fundamental battle right now is happening in every nook and cranny of our lives. And so many people right now are starting to wake up to that and are trying to figure out what to do. So the stories, I think, are compelling and continue to drive people's activism and change.